Hi, I'm your host Vasco Duarte. Welcome to the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast, where we share tips and tricks from Scrum Masters around the world. Every day, we bring you inspiring answers to important questions that all Scrum Masters face day after day. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Change Leadership episode. This week, we have with us Mike Lyons. Hey, Mike, welcome back.
Hey, man. How's everything?
All is good, at least so far, and I'm sure it's going to get better because we're going to talk about change.
Yeah.
I would say the waters we most swim in as Scrum Masters. Not necessarily our favorite, but definitely the most common type of waters we need to deal with, and sometimes quite stormy they can be. But before we jump ahead of ourselves, Mike, tell us a story of a change process and how it went from beginning to end. What were the steps that were followed in that change process? And as you go, do highlight for us the tools, the tips, the tricks, and the techniques you learned back then that you still apply today.
Yeah, thanks. It's a great question. And as you mentioned, so often the waters we find ourselves swimming in. So Scrum Masters, I mean, part of our role is this idea, not only that we are sort of team level coaching our teams to be self-managing, high-performing teams, absolutely. But remember, we're also supposed to be coaching the organization. It's a both and I think my experience with Scrum Masters is the first part comes sort of naturally because we can clear the impediments. We can make sure the teams are communicating effectively in the daily Scrum. That comes sort of naturally, and it's birthed out. It happens maybe early in your career, but the harder stuff, the sort of managing up and managing change up, let's just be honest, it's hard. It's just hard. There's no way around it. Change is hard. So a couple thoughts that I have found over the years in my experience, and this might be a little bit of, I don't want to say maybe counter to what the sort of general statements are. I think it's complementary, but I don't believe Agile is a mindset. I don't buy that. I think that's a bit of a cop-out. I don't see anybody else in the organization saying it's a mindset. You don't see finance people saying it's a mindset. You don't see human resources say marketing, you need to have a marketing mindset. Nope, nobody says that. Why don't they say that? Because they don't say that because all that matters is, like, are you doing well at marketing? Marketing, are you bringing in top line revenue growth? Finance, are you balancing the books? Like those are what you're being graded on. What's your mindset? That's not in anybody's performance review. Why do I bring that up? Because I think it's key to understand that change in an organization comes by way of doing things differently. Culture changes last. Everyone's going to agree to this. Culture changes last. You have to start doing things differently in order for the culture to change. Okay, so what does that look like? Well, I'll tell you what it looks like. Successful implementation at the team level. I'm not going to change the culture if my Scrum teams aren't delivering more effectively. They're not learning faster. They're not getting we're not increasing market share. The boardroom isn't sitting around wondering if we're doing good Scrum. No, the boardroom's sitting around wondering if we're increasing top line revenue growth and dropping bottom line cost reduction. Okay, Scrum Masters, you better be able to speak that language and show that by doing. So my opinion of culture and change adoption is it comes by seeing a different way of working and showing that is effective. And we have to start there. It's less about what you think about it. I do think eventually your mindset will shift. So is that an organization? This is a global nonprofit, and was doing some scaled implementation there. We had about 8 or 9 teams, and the way we were able to add more teams and build that out across the organization was because the 8 teams were delivering on a predictable cadence and showing that we can release value more frequently to our user base, our customers. We were showing that, and it wasn't until we were showing that the mindset changed. In the early days, the first almost year of the program, nothing changed. So I couldn't say, well, we just need to have an agile mindset. Nope. You need to do better delivery. That's what you need to do first. And then once I see we're delivering better, that's when I saw minds change. Go deliver. So for me, again, I come back to uh, you know, if you want to change the culture, you have to change the way you work. That's where it starts.
So when there, you said something there a minute ago that I think bears a little bit more exploring. You said that Scrum Masters need to be able to learn to talk this language, and you were referring to the board. What the board cares
Mm.
about and what they talk about. I'm sure you didn't mean that Scrum Masters should be accounting experts or marketing
Right.
experts. I'm sure you meant
Right.
something else. So let's dive into that a little bit more. What are the things, the skills, the approaches, the
Yeah.
perspectives that you see Scrum Masters missing that prevents them from connecting with that leadership side of the company?
Yeah, thank you for that. Let's talk about this from a perspective of uh, success measures a little bit too. Um, what I see, especially in new Scrum Masters, is this like focus on things like you know like velocity or burn down charts or things that are of little consequence to actually the delivery. Um, I also, one of my first questions I ask Scrum Masters is, how much does your team cost every sprint? It shouldn't be very difficult to figure that out. Just take your average run rate per person on your team, multiply it out by 40 and call it good. How much is that? Is it $80,000 a sprint? Is it $150,000 a sprint? You should know that. And those numbers might be like, cause you to be surprised. That's the language that the boardroom cares about. They care about how much are these things costing and how much money are we making. So another thing Scrum Masters should know is the product you're working on. What's the revenue share in the company? How much revenue is that bringing in? Do you know it in how much money the company makes based on your product? Now again, to your point, I'm not asking people to be, financial experts. This is pretty simple math. I could probably figure it out in just a few minutes, and I don't even work at your company. This is how uncomplicated it is. But how many Scrum Masters that you meet, they don't talk that way. They're like, well, we had 35 points of velocity. No board member gives a crap about your velocity. No, none of them. Not
No,
one
they
of them.
don't even know that we measure
No, and don't you dare bore them
velocity.
with it.
Some
Right? Of
do,
course they
and
don't know.
then they bear the consequences, as it usually goes. But I think
But
you
what?
raise a very important point, which is that we need to understand how our teams perform from the perspective of the organization as a whole, not just from the perspective of the team itself, the neighboring teams, or even the IT department, right?
That's right. Because remember, your IT department is measured on just a subset of the company's measurement. Typically. Your CIO, she's going to be measured differently than your CFO or her peer in the finance or chief human resources officer. They all have individual measures. But wherever we are in the organization, if as Scrum Masters, we're aligned to a product. You're probably doing product delivery. You should know about your product, what's happening in the marketplace. I would encourage you to know what your competitors' market share is too, and be able to speak the language of business, not so much the language of IT.
So, what do you think has changed in yours or your colleagues'
Mm.
perspectives once you've started to both understand as well as speak that language of the business, as you say?
Well, I find I sleep better because I know I'm able to demonstrate my value to the company pretty succinctly and pretty quickly. Um, uh, it's no secret, our industry is experiencing something. I don't exactly know what it is, but 2023 was a rough year for IT. And here in the US alone, we had 300,000 IT layoffs across information technology. Those are not agile roles, but a lot were. I don't know what's happening globally, but at least in the US, we're experiencing some shift. And so what is that? Well, companies are waking up to this idea that, yeah, top line revenue growth, bottom line cost reduction, that matters. And if you can't prove that you're helping do one or preferably both of those things, it can be tricky, right? It can be a little tricky.
Absolutely. And we do need to speak to our stakeholders' requests and goals because, after all, we are
There you
there
go.
because they are there. And that's what teamwork is all about, right? Understanding each other and building something better than we would be able to do separately. And
this topic is about organizational change, and so when I think about that, I think circling all the way back to the beginning, our role as Scrum Masters is twofold. It's definitely at the team level, but it's also that organizational level. And if you're going to move into that organizational level, then you better understand the language of the organization. That's kind of how I would sum it up.
And I think that's a great sum up. Thank you for sharing, Mike.
Yeah, man.
Leading change is one of the core skills we must acquire, but it is only one of the steps towards our success as Scrum Masters. Tomorrow, on Success Thursday, we will talk about how to define success for the Scrum Master role. We'll cover tips on how to measure your way to that position, and most importantly, how to develop that focus on continuous improvement that is as important for Scrum Masters as it is for teams. See you tomorrow.
We really hope you liked our show. And if you did, why not rate this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes? Share this podcast and let other Scrum Masters know about this valuable resource for their work. Remember that sharing is caring.